Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you are all doing well. I honestly miss everyone so much when I miss an upload. It's crazy, it feels like I've been gone a month. Okay, this video, I have been excited for this. This is the round coaster mold by Molds and Shapes with the heart in the center. We are going to be playing with Jesmonite and epoxy resin at the same time, kind of like dividing these up. I had this idea in my head, and I envisaged this exactly how I want it. So like 3/4 Jesmonite, 1/4 epoxy resin, and then on top of the Jesmonite, we're going to do some embossing. And then in the resin, we're going to be putting some foil. So I have this thing about silver and white at Christmas time. Now I'm showing you here the wrong stamp. It was only when I was filming I realised. We're going to be using a silver stamp to emboss with silver embossing powder. Then we're going to be putting silver foil in the resin. There's something about silver and white that just, I don't know what it is. I think it's nostalgia for me. So again, this kind of vision of snowy, Christmassy, icy, just silver and white. There's something about it. I already discussed this with my patrons. This video was very, very planned. I knew exactly what I wanted, where I wanted to put it. But let's talk about PPE. Make sure you've got your gloves on and your respirator. This is the respirator that I use. It is an Ellipse JVS half mask from Screwfix Direct. If anyone is interested in doing resin, I fully recommend PPE. Now here's the thing. I just said this video was fully planned. Now, we've had discussions before about the difference between going with the flow and just letting things evolve, but also meticulously planning out bit by bit what you want to create. This was one of those videos. I knew exactly what I wanted. I knew what it wanted to look like. I knew what I wanted it to look like. And I could already see the end result in my head, and I was so excited to bring my vision to life. Now, into the resin we have put some of the silver foil. Jesmonite and epoxy resin together at the same time, poured together at the same time, is something I've done many times on my channel. It works, it's beautiful, it gives us the most gorgeous results, and that is why I had this in my head. Okay, back to the video. Can you tell where I'm going with my voiceover? First thing I did before I did any pouring was to clean my molds. My molds are quite often kind of like statically filled with debris or just a little bit of glitter from somewhere. Just using tape can get your molds looking like new, so that is what I did before I started. Now, as for the Jesmonite portion, I wasn't exactly sure how much I'd need because I'm not filling them completely with Jesmonite. I'm just doing that kind of 3/4 vision, so I wasn't quite sure of how much to pour, but luckily just made enough. As for the white, I wanted my Jesmonite white. Now Jesmonite, out of all of the eco pours, is the least white. I'm actually going to be using some Resin Crete, and we all saw Buonite as well. They're very, very white naturally. Jesmonite is not, it's very cream, but I wanted crisp white. Now my white pigment is gone. It's completely rock hard at the bottom. I've just got this kind of bit of liquid at the top. Wasn't sure if it would do the job, but it seemed to make my Jesmonite very, very white, which I was really happy with. Here is where the pour kind of started to go wrong. I started pouring the Jesmonite. Now, Jesmonite as a product doesn't tend to flow and travel in the same way that epoxy resin does. However, today it decided it was going to go on a little journey and travel faster than I was expecting it to. So it was at this point I quickly grabbed my resin and I was like, oh no, it's kind of taken over the mold and I really don't want that. I want my 1/4, or now we can see 1/5 is going to be my epoxy resin with the silver. So I did have a bit of a panic there when I saw my Jesmonite traveling faster than it usually travels. I was trying to be ready on this one and not make the same kind of mistake. But again, alas, this is me. This is me. So again, I tried to get in there real quick before the Jesmonite took over. and fill my section with my epoxy resin and my silver. Can you see the vision? Can you see the vision I was going for? This kind of, oh holy night, that kind of sparkly, snowy, crisp winter scene. That's what I was going for. I'm using my micro brushes just to get in and around those Jesmonite edges. They are notorious. Jesmonite is definitely one of the eco pores that is more likely to give you those air pockets around your 90-degree edges, just because Jesmonite, so far from my experience, is the thickest out of all of the eco pores. Ones I've been using recently, especially with added water, it flows. They flow so much more like a liquid. Now, it was at this point I could already see the Jesmonite taking over. The two on the right hand side, almost to the point where there's no resin visible at all on the bottom. It's like the Jesmonite didn't want to stop moving. It started flowing like I've not known it to flow before, but equally it decided it didn't want to stop. It carried on. And what was happening here, you can see I'm just taking some Jesmonite out. Two reasons: I'd poured a bit too much, and the second reason, I was hoping with all hope, with my fingers crossed, that the Jesmonite would start to come back. It wouldn't carry on traveling. I was having a bit of an internal panic here because I really could see it was too late. It had gone to the point where, you know, the two on the right, it had been taken over. It had basically been completely taken over by resin. The two on the left, however, we have some resin. It's not quite the quarter that I was going for. It's more of like an eighth at this point. But luckily, we have two coasters that had it worked out. Now we do have where the resin has kind of joined up with the Jesmonite and it's kind of gone over. I've had that in previous projects as well. We get this kind of line of resin that we can just about work out and see. But at this point, I am taking it. I am taking it because we have our slither. That's what I wanted. A slither of epoxy resin with the silver foil. These two, it was clear. It was too late. But then something crazy happened. Bear in mind, this is 24 hours later after pouring because that resin needs to cure. I don't know at this point what had gone wrong, but the Jesmonite was still soft. Now, I kind of understand what happened now, but at the time, I was very confused. This is not something that's ever happened to me before. I have done resin and Jesmonite before many, many times. The rest of the Jesmonite was rock hard, like solid as you can possibly imagine it being. But there were areas on this one, it was still soft. Something somewhere had gone wrong. My first initial thought was, you know, I used the white pigment, but I really didn't use the proper pigment. I just used the dregs of the liquid that was left on top of the solidified pigment. Maybe, just maybe, that just had far too much water content and it couldn't cope with being smothered in epoxy resin. So after I had a little bit of a cleanup, I decided to investigate the two that had worked. And it was the same issue. Guys, when I tell you my heart was crying, my heart was crying. So, my theory now is where the Jesmonite meets the resin had seeped under the Jesmonite, or the Jesmonite had seeped over the resin somewhat. And I guess having resin underneath and over the top of Jesmonite doesn't allow that small section of Jesmonite to fully dry out and fully cure. That is what I think has happened here. Now, I've had seep over before. Seep. I've had resin and Jesmonite seep over and under each other before. And I guess maybe I didn't investigate it. I never tried. I never looked. And I've never had a problem. Whereas this time around, we definitely ran into these issues where the Jesmonite simply had not cured underneath that resin seepage. It just didn't get a chance to breathe. Let me know if you have ever encountered this before, because again, this was all very new to me. After doing this multiple times and never having a problem, I was just so soul destroyed. You know how I've said it in previous videos, like, can you even get a Claire's Crafty video that goes to plan? Now, bear in mind, I fully planned these out. These weren't a go with the flow, chuck it all in, shove it all in kind of video. And yet, I just couldn't believe I was sitting here with having these problems where the seepage had caused the Jesmonite after 24 hours to still be soft. Okay, listen, as the kids say nowadays, we move, okay? It happened. We're gonna carry on. We're gonna roll with the punches and just carry on and see what we can create from a project that hadn't quite gone to plan. Can you even believe you're watching a Claire's Crafty Corner video where something didn't go to plan? Shall we all just chuckle now? Honestly, I feel like my films, my videos are turning into something we need popcorn for. That's how I feel right now. But to tell you the truth, I've got some amazing projects coming up that have all gone to plan. So there's hope, guys, there's hope. So excited for the next few videos. Anyway, I am stamping my stunning stag, or let's call them reindeer because this is Christmas. My reindeer stamps are beautiful. Again, these are from Amazon. They will be linked in my Amazon storefronts. I'm using my silver ink on those stamps to stamp the Jesmonite section. Remember, this is 24 hours later. So I think when it comes to embossing, I would always recommend waiting 24 hours. Let that Jesmonite, the irony, fully dry out before you do any stamping and any embossing. We are adding a lot of heat to these projects, so you really want to make sure there's no moisture at all in your Jesmonite. Anyway, a big shake off. I still haven't got my anti-static cloth. I really need to get some anti-static cloth, but yeah, we still managed to get this done without too much of that embossing powder kind of floating everywhere. If you are new to embossing powder, it's really just a way to elevate. Most people use it in junk journaling, card making, cardstock and things like that, but it works beautifully on your Jesmonite as well. Once I've stamped it and I've poured over my embossing powder, we're just gonna shake off the excess and then we're gonna get our heat gun out, and that is when these really come to life. So again, if you are new to embossing, stay tuned and you will see the magic happen in front of your very, very eyes. Just make sure that the image that you have stamped onto your Jesmonite is fully coated in your embossing powder to get the full effect. Can you see my vision, guys? I had this vision. I had this vision minus the canal that has now been created in the coasters. But that was me just putting all of my embossing powder back into the bag, and now it is time for the heat gun. I'm pointing to the bottom of the screen because I'm letting you know that this heat embossing tool is linked in my Amazon storefronts under tools. Now, when it comes to embossing, I say that you don't want to stay in one place too long, but here I am staying in one place too long. I float the embossing powder, the embossing tool, the heat tool. I float it all over my stag first, just to kind of generally heat up the whole area. Then I go more slowly and just heat up specific areas. And you can see that embossing powder is turning almost into a liquid molten silver. And it's basically raising up off the surface into a beautiful, totally shiny silver. And that is what we are looking for. I have to say, this looks a little bit like dabbed on this one. Like, these stamps don't necessarily cover my ink pads in the way I want them to. They're very, very dotty. Does that make sense? You can see it here. They're very dotty. So that's the difference between the pre-embossed and the afterwards. One is very, very matte and still wet, and the embossed image is absolutely stunning, rock hard, and yes, it can take a cup of tea because the heat coming out of this heat gun, trust me, it's way, way hotter than a cup of tea would be. But look at it come to life. It is absolutely stunning. So my original vision was just this crisp white Jesmonite, clear resin with foil inside, and a super sparkly embossed reindeer on the side to bring out the silver foil from the resin. It didn't go to plan, but we're still carrying on with the project because once I had carved out all of the wet Jesmonite, it just left us with this channel that we could then do so many things with. I decided to actually use a pen, but what you could do is tape the edges and fill that with resin. You could fill that with silver resin. You could, in fact, I was thinking about it, use some glitter glue and fill it with stunning silver glitter glue, which will eventually dry rock hard. You could, if you wanted to, do a resin top coat. I generally don't bother doing resin top coats on Jesmonite because Jesmonite is already super heat proof and I just don't want to add Jesmonite resin to that. But here I am using my Silver Deco Color metallic pen just to colour in that channel, just to kind of pretend it was on purpose. Definitely wasn't. And yeah, just to add a little something something. I don't think that this kind of weird wet Jesmonite canal era has totally destroyed the coasters. I think it definitely could be seen as more of an abstract piece. Totally workable. I think they're totally workable. But again, how you fill in those channels, if this has happened to you, is entirely up to you. You could do it with epoxy. You could add more Jesmonite, but the Jesmonite won't stick to resin. So remember that as well. Jesmonite does not stick to cured epoxy. Epoxy sticks to Jesmonite no matter what, but it doesn't work the other way around. So you couldn't fill those channels with Jesmonite because it would simply chip out. It won't stick to the epoxy. Here I decided, in for a penny, in for a pound. We've already done the most. We might as well do even more. There are days where I do decide to walk away and keep things minimalist, but this was not one of those days. I decided to add even more embossing just in the form of these snowflakes, which also came as part of the set, and just doing exactly the same thing again and again. I'm not going to take you through all of this because you've already seen me embossing the stags and the reindeer, but I did the same thing with some snowflakes just to add a little bit of something something. I think I'm trying to avert everyone's eyes away from that canal that we've made, from that channel. Same thing again, tappity tap tap, get all of that powder off, use your heat gun, emboss the snowflakes, bring them to life. And I did exactly the same with both coasters, and these are the results after I've embossed. I still think they've got something going for them. I love the idea of the silver and white. I'm very into silver and white this year. My Christmas decorations tend to be traditional reds, greens, golds, but silver and white definitely has a nostalgic thing for me. It's a nostalgia. I don't know what it is about it, but I still love them. I genuinely love them despite the channel, despite things not quite going to plan. I'm glad I persevered. I'm glad I've added a real subtle hint of those snowflakes. The snowflakes aren't as in your face as the reindeer, so that's okay. They're just off to the side, you know that they're there. But yes, I'm looking forward to doing more white and silver, and hopefully I won't get the same results. This is what they are looking like in the daylight. I really love them. I hope you have too, and let me know if you've experienced this strange wet Jesmonite after 24 hours that I've never experienced. So yeah, let me know in the comment section down below. I hope you've enjoyed these ones. I cannot wait, I actually cannot wait for you to see Monday's video. It is a first for me. I've never done it before, and oh my goodness me, the results. I'm utterly in love with them. I will see you all on Monday. Bye.